We good? Okay, great. All right, this is a session, actually, that half of what I'm going to talk about was the stuff that was already talked about at the keynote, the importance of how to get money out of these people for this budget, and then several of the disclosure things that we had in the last session there. My background is I'm not in security. I'm an ex-CIO and an ex-CFO. So people have gotten lots and lots of money out of me, and I've asked people for lots and lots of money. And sometimes you get it and sometimes you don't. But the nature of the game here is up at the executive level, it is selling. It is selling the ideas, selling the value, and this is just very basic blocking and tackling on sales and marketing for what we do. Everything up there, you're selling a product. You're selling a value, you're selling a service, you're selling something. Most of us, if you grew up in the technical world like I did, I started cutting code for hire, software for hire, in the fall of 1968 as a freshman in college on a IBM 360 Model 40, doing statistical stuff in Fortran 2. I grew up in a technical capacity, and my master's thesis was writing an operating system for a mainframe. That did not equip me to be today's CIO in terms of where everything is selling and building consensus and support. You're having to manage multiple organizations at once. So this experience comes across from a wide base of experience since those days and working with many customers. So our agenda is, first we're going to get a slide or two on why are we talking about selling, why is that critical here, and then who are we selling to, and then we're just going to go in one slide for 10 just really practical things. Some of it's going to look like a flannel graph, something, it'll look almost like that. You'll think, okay, where does this fit into the selling? And you'll see exactly what this does as we go through this. So let's talk about why selling. And a lot of it, this has to do because the executive responsibility for security, the job has changed. This is from the executive board, the conference executive board, their Information Risk Leadership Council that our organization owns. And they measured successful influencers in security influencing organizational practice, and specifically, more to the point, budgetary practice. And you'll see that what they see there basically is that there's a change in the way it's strategy. From we were bearing most of the risk, now we're out selling to the other people that are involved in the process for them to adopt good practices. They've got budget for their things. We would just like for them to use their budget for their things in alignment with us. So a lot of what we're having to do now is selling to the various constituencies. So influencing has become one of the more dominant skill sets that are required for our role. In the study from CISOs that was done by the executive board, they ranked things in terms of the highest performance. It was those security departments that had the greatest impact, greatest result, best performing professionals and things of this type. They ranked basically competency skills. You can see over there, business results orientation, decision making, influence, organizational awareness, all the way down to relationship management and teamwork. Those are competencies. Then they also put into the regression analysis things like pay raise, incentive compensation, other things that weren't related to a competency but were normally considered HR drivers. And in the study, and they put in other things like years of experience in the field, certifications, a number of other little factors. And by far and away, the largest impact were those four things. Business results orientation, we're going to talk about that, decision making, influencing others, and organizational awareness, being aware of what's going on in the business. Okay? Apart from decision making, all of those others are relationship based. Me going out and asking the business units, what do you do for a living? What are you going to be doing for a living? Organizational awareness. And then influencing, whatever you're going to be doing, I sure would like it. This would be a good thing to do in support of your business objectives. These were all just pure business skills. Pure business skills. You can see where a tech driver was down low, was surprisingly low, right? Because a lot of this may be on somebody else's budget. If I can talk them into doing it, that's what I'd really like to do. And as long as they let me monitor it too. I got to be able to sign off on the sucker as we go. So that's what we're talking about selling, why it's important, and who are we selling it to? We're selling it to two constituencies. One, to an employee base. Decisions in many cases for high productive professionals and executives. It's a tough challenge. But we're selling into something that I don't know whether I like the red one better or the black one. I just can't make up my mind, and the machine keeps rolling. And so we're at that stage. That's one of our constituencies. But our bigger problem now are our executive peers. Okay? So these are the same, this is the same group. These are all giant organizations, CISOs. Who do you have to work with? The average CISO has to work with 7 peer executives. So that's everything from internal audit to risk, legal, HR. Okay? So the number of peers that we're having to influence, not just at the employee level, but at a peer level, is growing. And the one in the bottom there is about how obstructionist are they to our agendas. In other words, how often do they get in our way, right, of achieving our objectives? Now remember, they get paid to achieve their objectives, right? So the system is supposed to balance out, right? If there's an equality of power, that's why you'll buy, from a CEO standpoint, you'll hire 4 overly arrogant senior vice presidents. As long as they're balanced, they'll fight it out, and the system is supposed to optimize that the resources get allocated. But it only works if you're balanced, right? And so that's what you've got to do, is we've got to find out what these people's goals are, like a manager, attach our goals to their goals so that they're pulling for us and maybe not knowing it. We'll talk about visibility, why we need them to know it as we go forward. Okay, that's who we're selling to. That's why this is critical. Your job is going to get more and more salesy, more and more. If you're a practitioner, guess who you're selling to? Everybody you touch. Everybody you touch, because the people you touch today, they're going to be a manager tomorrow and an executive the day after that. Okay? So this is something that starts local and builds your skill set as well. From an executive, you have to grow this in your people. You have to grow this in your people. The first of the 10 practical things is probably the most important. If you can do some version of this, you're way ahead of the game. This is just the lunch and the learn. This is knowing your customers, what they measure, what they do for a living, and how it's valued. So this is basically your pizza lunch, where you have one of the vendors on the showroom. They come down and they put up their products, and then they bring in the pizza, right? And what you have is your team there, and you have somebody from logistics over, somebody from finance, somebody from manufacturing, from various constituencies, and they come in and they give you a lunch and learn on what they do for a living over there. How the people are measured, what their toughest problems are, what they're challenged with growing, their biggest fears about security, the biggest productivity. You find out what they do for a living. Because when you go back to sell, you're going to match everything you do to what they do for a living. Because what counts as money is what they count as money. What counts as value, that's why in number 2 of the keynoters, what's it worth? You're protecting it. What is it? And then one of them was, what is it valued? It's what are they valued? I tell our sales team in the financial services arena, if a customer likes if you're selling pink refrigerators, and your customer likes this refrigerator because it's pink, you don't go to close that sale on how cold it keeps things. You close on how pink the sucker looks, right? That's what is the most important thing. That's what counts as value. That's what you always ask. What's important to you in the solution that we produce? What's the important drivers, right? You don't assume, as he made it the point over and over and over, you don't assume we know. We know what they should be thinking about, generally, right? But somewhere between what we think and what they get measured to do professionally and have done successfully is probably where the truth is for the organization as a whole. So these slides are all available, so I'm not going to have to go through all these. But you want to see the point there is to learn the business. Now, if they won't give you the time of day to do this, then you get one of your team that supports them to go learn the business by interviewing out on the site, out in the department, and come back and they just teach inside. Okay? So you still got to get those information, and that's to the rank and file. That's to the practitioners. Okay? And you want to find out what's the biggest changes and what do they see are the biggest changes coming down the pipe. How would a security breach impact them? What would happen if? Okay? So that's probably the most important one is finding out what the business does. Talking in business results terms, talk in terms of loan approvals, map everything you do to financial transactions, to delivered widgets, to customer satisfaction, and find out what they get measured on. Because a lot of times if you're talking with the executive, what they get measured on is also what they get compensated on. So if you help them with this, you're helping them with this, you're helping them buy the boat that they want. Okay? All right, 2, something for everyone. When you're selling a project initiative, you make sure that the document contains some benefit for everybody at the table. Now, in the diagram, I've got the security officer. This security project will cost X dollars and will reduce our risk of loss of intellectual property and reputation. And every other bubble that says, but how does it help me hit my team's goals? Every other bubble says it, because that's exactly what's going on in everybody's head. How does this, first of all, depending upon what your cultural relationship is, they're going to start with, how does this hurt me? Okay, that's where they're going to start with anything we do in compliance or IT or good management practices. But we want to get to the point of where, how can I leverage this? And that's what you have to leverage for them. That's where you lead with. This will help you do X. And that's why the lunch and learns was so important. Learning the business of what that department does. So you draw out the benefits. I learned this from a super savvy SVP. I was really young. I took it as my second CIO role. Actually, I worked for the Senior Vice President of Logistics, and we were doing a huge change out, and we were going to go ask for $36 million for an upgrade to Erlanger, Kentucky distribution center. We're putting in some fancy stuff. Pick the lights. Back in those days, that was fancy stuff. Okay? And so we were going to ask this, and I built all this great little plan, stuff like this. He said, okay, well, this has got to go before executive committee. So there's 6 people in the committee. So let's go. We have appointments with each one of those people individually. And we went over the plan with them, each individually. Can you see anything wrong with this? Do you see where this will help you? What should we do? Everybody tweaked it. Everybody had some ownership. Everybody surfaced all of their objections then. So once we had sold to everybody and we came into the big meeting with the CEO there was nobody there that could say, wait a minute, this is wrong, X, Y, and Z. It had already been cleared and been tweaked and refined and built around a consensus document. It had something for everybody that was going to vote at the table or that was going to talk about me behind my back. Okay, one of those 2, or both. 3, document damage avoidance. Okay, you got to get beyond just cost avoidance. We normally think in terms of cost avoidance, but you know in this field, a lot of it has to do with also other types of damage. Reputational damage is a cost. It's a huge cost. It's just hard sometimes to put the numbers on it. We try to do that with insurance, but that's a separate issue. As a practitioner, or as a manager of practitioners, whenever you fix a problem, whether it was full-blown or you prevent it or something, you have a little form that you go through with the end user, the business user. It's not the security person, but they're the one that had the problem on their PC, they had it on their system, they had it with the cloud server, something of this type, and you go through what damage had already occurred, what would have happened if we didn't stop it, what would have been the business impact of that, how much would that have cost you in loan approvals, house transactions, legal filings, widgets shipped, designs submitted, etc. You try to map that, get them to assess that. And it's their valuation of how pink that refrigerator is that counts here. What do they put the money estimate? Yours doesn't count for nothing. Your estimate of what it is. You will know what your costs are, your cost to fix it then, or your cost to fix it had it exploded. Maybe we'll know that cost, but we don't know the business impact like they will. So you try to get them to fill this out so that you build a dossier of hundreds of these little bitty things, so that when it comes time when somebody questions anything you do, you walk in. And I've seen sales reps do this in a different setting. They'll walk in with a stack of 100 papers and put it out on the board. That's what I do for a living. This is all the things we supported you, and you, and you, and you, and you know, not in those terms, of course. But that was the point they were getting across. This is the stuff that we fight every day. We help you every day, etc. And here's this is what your people tell us. I'm not making this up. Look, Joe signed this. Joan signed this. Right? So document the damage avoidance, if at all possible, in terms of their estimates. The executive version of this, and this is critical, those are points 1, 2, and 3 of the keynoter, is we have to determine the return before the investments when we're assessing risk of a security breach. So what this would do is that the CISO, the executives, would meet with the department heads, which you should be doing on a regular basis anyway for relationship building, etc., and going through assessing what would it cost if we had this kind of breach, we had this kind of loss of property, we had this kind of break-in, etc. What damage would that do? In other words, I've got to prioritize things. That's where you normally position this. I've got to prioritize this. I've got to present it to steering committee. I'm trying to get the estimates so I'll know where to put the money. And so if they know they're competing for your attention in terms of that, they'll give you slightly higher estimates of the damage if you don't do your job or if you don't get money for this. So you'll get some fairly decent estimates out of this, and that's the return before you even go ask for the investment. You got to get those numbers, because if you just walk in blind and said, well, I don't know the good I have to give you, but I need $22 million to do it, whatever the good is. Right. It doesn't work. You got to have these numbers here. And typically what you have to do at the CFO level is you'll go in with the numbers. He said this, said, okay, let's assume that, Mr. CFO, let's assume that they've bloated this by 50%. Let's scale it down and see what the number is. It's still huge. I know sitting in the CFO chair, when the line of business would come to me and they say, well, if you give me this money, I'll give you this much return on investment. And if you add it all up to what they were going to do, it's more than 10 times what the company makes. You know, it can't all be successful at once like that. And so you scale these things back, you apply just good financial cynicism to it, you screw them down with all the details to show how much planning. That's a little too much overtime on the third shift, isn't it? You know, you have to be sort of detailed like that for that. And what you can always tie this to, and this was this point here about you can tie it to business continuity or disaster recovery projects as well. Put that in that business impact analysis thing. I mean, that's a Trojan horse for a lot of stuff. And this has got to be put in there. So that's 4, making sure, again, these are all business terms, business estimates. The department's giving you this. 5, here we move to always on awareness. And this is where you're going to just constantly be letting the employees and the people know what's going on in the data breach world. Not a morbidity. It's like you're going to help. So this is where you're going to report on failures on other industry players or outside the industry, just other events. And what you're going to do is give a script to the employees, okay? Because they're going to be asked, and your little flyer will say something like, when your friends and family ask you, did you hear about the ABC company being hacked? Here's what you can say. Okay? Then when they move to the next question, could that happen to your company? Then here's what you say. And you arm them, just like in the previous presentation, the lawyer's presentation. You give those scripts to the call center, to the executives. This is to the employees, because your main goal here is to educate the employees on why it couldn't happen at your place and what the risk is. So they'll become aware, more and more aware of what the dynamics of this world is. Okay? And then you're going to tell them basically where your firm stacks up with why it happened over there. They didn't validate the supply chain feeds, something of that type. And you say, here's what we're doing. And if you have to say, we're not able to do them all because of our limited budget. Okay, so that every employee knows that, oh, we do have some risk there because they don't get enough money. So in case it ever comes up to a vote or some kind of influence around the lunchroom, you've got some information, some supporters there for that. But this helps him out a lot in terms of awareness. And again, this is the goal of awareness, not PR. I'm not talking about containment. I'm talking about growing an organization that's supportive of what you're doing. Make an interesting dashboard. These are some of the coolest things in the world. This is where you make a little portal on security things, right? And it's a little fun. It's got a cartoon. It's got some charts, smart tips for doing stuff from a consumer standpoint. It helps them at home. Card fraud, things of this type. It's got a dashboard of how many events did not have to get escalated to incidents. So I wrote down from the previous one, the incident to event ratio. That's a good number. You know, that's worth starting to track and report on. Those type of things. For those of you that can't read the cartoon, you always put some humor in this because you gotta look a little like. For those of you who can't read the cartoon, there's apparently a dad giving a child a puppy. And the dad is saying, the Bible says, you can name her whatever you like, but be sure it's something you can remember. You'll be using it as a security question answer for the rest of your life. Okay. What was the name of your first pet? Right? Okay. So, and you put this out there and you can put this on a pedestal outside of your department. You can put it as a portal on the network. It doesn't matter where it goes, but people will go to it because they're interesting factoids that they can use, that they can show off at home. You know, it's just an interesting kind of thing. But again, it builds awareness of just the various issues and things of this type. Fire.
How often would you recommend refreshing that dashboard?
I would not do it any more frequently than weekly. Maybe fortnightly. But now you will have to, in the case of that prior one where we were going to give them scripts, if there's a big break-in, you'll have a little splash up there and you'll do an email alert out to the team, you know, something of that type saying, go to the portal. We've got some updated scripts, so when the family asks you about company so-and-so. Yeah. Certainly. Security product parade. So this is where you bring in security vendors, services, products, whatever, okay? And you basically set them up almost like it'd be like a trade show, but just one product at a time. You don't even have to buy those products. Your goal is to say, these are products that are out in the marketplace. They address this problem. Because you'll get 50% of your people's regular employees will say, I didn't know that was a problem. Right? Why does this thing, $4,000? Is that big of a problem? Awareness. 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 Building a culture that thinks awareness about these things. And you can pick your own taxonomy. You can put it in if you want to, switch them between the two. The important thing is to show what the problem it solves was, and if the problem is not solved, what it cost. What it cost an organization. If it hurts productivity, if it hurts hiring, if it hurts anything, that's what you just need to make them aware of, that all of these problems have cost associated with them. The last one there about include products for the home and the consumer too. So, in other words, you're normally going to be putting enterprise products up, you know, a supply chain kind of security products and things of this type. But every so often you want to put in something for home security, home offices, college kids, you know, something that's good for them that they can use. And so they'll look at that for that reason as well. Okay. And it shows, again, you're thinking out for them for their value because they're all there. They're all there. Fire. No problem.
But when you go outside of just your enterprise and you start saying, hey, when you're home, when you're college, etc., do your legal department ever get cagey about that, providing security advice to folks outside?
You're never actually offering advice. You're only demonstrating a product. Okay. And you're saying this product exists because it tries to solve this problem, And this is one of the ones that the market has accepted. And that's as far as you go. And that's part of the reason why you put products that you don't use enterprise there too, to show that this is not about, each one of these is an individual choice that you have to make. And you can do, I've seen successfully, not actually in security, but on end user software. I've seen where people have set up little trade shows in the cafeteria. And they've had 5 or 6 competing vendors come in with their fancy little mobile apps. You know, they'll set up little booths and so that's all it is. You don't recommend any one of those specifically. You vetted the vendor already to make them swear up and down that mobile device management works on this sucker, or that we can use a VPN, or whatever. You've made sure that it's not a dangerous leak hole, right? So you've done the vetting. But again, it's a matter of just showing that here are your options. Your mileage may vary. And that's part of why you demonstrated also in the enterprise products. Outsider testimonials. Now, when I had to come up with 10, and I came up with 12, and I had to cut 2 of them out. And this one could not make it out because of 2014. Supply chain. More than 60% of our big breaches last year came through the supply chain. They were either through the HVAC vendor, the famous Target one, or they were through the CERT UK report. Somebody hacked a website developer templates so that every website they built for somebody had their malware in it. Clever. I mean, they're going for scale, going for leverage. Okay? Those types of things, right? Tool makers. They're the ones that are under a lot of attack. The tool maker is generally a smaller firm. They're making great software tools. They're not putting a lot of money in security to protect their lamp stack. Let's put it that way. So what you would like to do here, and this is visibility. Supply chain protection is not my topic. I'm trying to look good here. Right? That's what this is. Right? I want the press release. I want a vendor that said, well, we're thankful that your company forced us to do an audit and forced us to look at this again because we were able to find 2 things or 3 things and avoid something. Thank you so. We appreciate this. It's been great for our business. You'd like the same thing over on customers. The customers that said, we like doing business with you because of all of your investments in security. The fact of some of the incidences, the events that did not turn into incidences last year. Because if 2 of them had happened, it would have affected us. Now, those types of things, because everybody's in a multiple step supply chain. So you get the testimonials, you run them in the paper, you run them in the interoffice news, you put them on the portal, right? Put them up in the cafeteria or whatever. Put them on the bulletin board. Point is just let everybody know that, oh, I didn't think about the vendors. Remember, I'm trying to get all the way through the organization here, not just the execs. I gotta just culture, I gotta assimilate this stuff. They gotta breathe it. They gotta walk in the halls thinking in terms of just alertness, not hyper vigilance, but just awareness that when you speak, you're talking about something real that hurts them if it doesn't work, right? That kind of thing. All right, so outsider testimonials, rewards and recognition, and this is basically where you're giving plaques away, right? So you're going to give rewards and recognition programs. You generally don't have a lot of money for this, but that's not what we're about here. This is about recognition before peers. To departments, you'll give awards for the most improved, best practices, best threat preparedness when you run your drills or your analyses, best threat response when something did hit. Okay, what was the best? It might not have been successful, but if it was the best one, it's worth noting. Somebody needs to be recognized for that. Highest scores on security testing. So if you're doing the increasingly we're having the spear phishing test, right? So we hire outside social engineering firms and audit tests to try to use social engineering to take over a GoDaddy domain. Okay, for example, it just recently happened. We're not having a PIN number, not having the email address, not having anything, right? But just playing the part of a frustrated executive who had lost his password for the domain. So when you have that, you should recognize those people that are wary well enough to do that. Okay, individuals thwarting an attack, notifying you of a very dangerous situation. Yeah, there are a lot. You pick the ones that work for you at where you are in building awareness. For membership and steering committee, you're going to want your own steering committee of rank and file folk, not execs. The day workers. The day workers generate what's called anecdotal data. So when you go into a boardroom, you always want to have two sets of data. You want to have metrics, and you want to have anecdotal data. The metrics are the stats, the numbers, things. The anecdotal data is where you show pictures of roadkill, the blood, those kinds of things. It has that visceral impact. If you just go with this, the CFO will just shoot you down just like that. If you go with just like this, it doesn't have the push sometimes you need to get over that, just a little bit more over there. You need to go in with both, with both sets of data. So you want rank and file on the steering committee, them bringing up their own horror stories and honey stories. You want vendor recognitions. That's going to get more and more important. You ought to do certifications. You ought to give them an award, give them a certificate for being certified, whatever their particular certified is, right? So, I mean, it may be just a service audit, a SOC 2, something of that type. But whatever it is, okay, and if you think about it now, this will become mandated over time. Okay, in HIPAA, in the HIPAA world, this is business associates. We've got it now in financial services, all the way through the partners. Now they're having the legal industry. All the partnerships are having to be now examined and certified all the way through. That's going to become more and more mandated. That's going to become a compliance cost and a regulatory cost. And so jump on it ahead of time, because until it becomes obligatory, it's called an advantage. When the ATM little machines, not the optical transport, when ATM machines first came out, they were a competitive weapon, right? Because you would do business when you could do it that way. In 20 years, they became a competitive necessity. You couldn't be taken seriously launching a bank without an ATM in a location, right? And that's the way all of these things happen, right? They'll move down. For a while, there'll be a marketing advantage. And this will be something your chief marketing officer will be interested in, participating with, because this will look good, especially in these early stages. The final one is the suggestion box. It's an age-old technique. And the good thing about the suggestion box, if you make it anonymous, is that unpopular suggestions that you come up with may come from somebody else through a suggestion box, subject to ethics. But generally speaking, when you ask the tough questions, how can we help employees and managers who knowingly compromise security for the sake of results? How can we help them? Right? That's a tough question. There's no answer you can give that is acceptable, by the way. But rank and file employees that work in that department or that care for the company, they can make that suggestion. You can say, hey, it's a popular vote, guys. I don't know. What do you think? Why are they saying this? We got 3 of these this month. And you have to watch that. I mean, you can, this can't just become just a terrible flame box like a blog could be. But you'd have to watch it. And a lot of times you'll put monetary rewards on suggestions, those suggestions that make company the most money. Our firm multiple times has done that. You'll put a prize for the one that saves the most money. And that's not necessarily the way to go. The old joke is about they put the company put a suggestion box out, and the first prize for whatever saved the most money, the prize was $50. And the winning entry for the first month was cut the prize from $50 to $25. Right. Okay. You can see that doesn't get you any results, right? That's just cost cutting, right? So you have to incent, you have to be careful, you have to protect anonymity here, because especially if you got a tough situation, anonymity is going to be important here. But if you have a tough situation, the ethical spread of people throughout your organization are generally, if you've got a successful organization, there will be people that use the box and tell. There will be this. And they won't think they're whistleblowing, which takes another level of courage than just putting something in an anonymous box. Okay? You can tie that to rewards and recognition, for best this, good idea, great idea. But remember, protect that anonymity if that's important. Okay. Now, if those 10 things basically map to those 4 influencers, those top 4 skills, decision making is not in there. So there's nothing in what we've talked about that would help in your people or you making decisions better in risk and security risk trade-offs. Those tough calls that have to be made on the fly, on the spot. Okay. What they will do is those other 3. Okay. That will give you knowledge. I can talk business with the business unit. Okay. I'm aware that this business unit is moving into a new geography where there are different rules, perhaps. Okay. I know this business unit is thinking about using this data center, part of the cloud. I got geotagging issues with data borders, etc. The knowledge of organizational awareness will give you visibility, but again, you become more part of the team. Become more part of the business. When I took over a CIO role in a remedial context once, and IT was a fortress mentality, right? You had to fill out a 46-page form to get any kind of systems change. It was really difficult. I wanted an Excel. I was for marketing. I was doing product marketing in the computer area for that. I just wanted a download of what people were buying in an Excel spreadsheet. And it was like a 12-page form and take a number. It was unbelievable. I was just really shocked having been on that side of the desk before. And through a long series of events, I ended up, that guy left, and I took that organization. The mentality was there. And the first thing we did was I changed the comp plan. I put incentives for all of the individual systems and analysts that supported a business unit. They were get paid on how many times they took their customer to lunch in the first 60 days. That's all I wanted them to do, was just take them to lunch. I'll pay for the lunch. I just want you guys to visit. Find out what they do for a living, where they hurt, why they, what they're like, and break down those walls. And so that's what this will do. This will build an organization that you're a part of more, and that's more a part of you, and now starts thinking they will ask, maybe we should ask Glenn. I just like to run this by Glenn, too, because there's a lot of scary data here. Anyway, we could include him in the conversation. And that's where you're trying to get as part of this. And that is it. So we have just a couple of minutes for questions. But you can see why this is selling. This is sales and marketing, right? There's nothing unique to security about this, per se. When you get transferred into some other job, okay, you'll apply the same techniques. And you got put into this one, you'll have the same kind of issues associated with it. As you grow it to supervisory role, manager role, executive roles, these will be the kinds of things you're always going to do. You go ask the customer, what do you need? How pink does it have to be before you'll buy one? That's the thing. So thanks for your time and attention. And if there are any questions, any other questions? All right, well, we're on time then, right? Excellent. Thanks again. We'll see you in another session.